Bugs in the garden. Most of us grab a spray bottle the moment we spot a damaged leaf. Yet the Amish, they steer clear of pesticides. Absolutely none. Zero chemicals, no easy ways out. Only traditional techniques handed down like cherished family knowledge. While the rest of the world uses science labs and warning labels to combat bugs, the Amish rely on wisdom, patience, and sheer skill to safeguard their gardens. No technology, no poisons, just proven outcomes. So, how exactly do the Amish manage to deter bugs without resorting to a spray bottle? It all begins with the soil, because in their view, the ground isn't mere dirt, it holds memory. And their treatment of it? It's nothing less than brilliant. They don't simply hazard a guess about planting times. They aren't dependent on charts or apps or the internet's latest advice on optimal planting schedules. Not at all. The Amish perceive the soil as a living chronicle, one that retains every detail. If pests ravaged their cucumbers in a particular spot 3 summers back, they avoid planting cucumbers there the following year, or even the year after. They might hold off for 5, 6, perhaps even 7 years before reintroducing that crop to the identical piece of ground. What's the reason? Certain pests don't vanish quickly. They linger too, concealed underground like miniature saboteurs, merely awaiting the return of their preferred plant. But the Amish stay a step ahead. By implementing rotation founded on soil memory, rather than just the calendar, they disrupt the pest strategy entirely. Now this is where things get fascinating. The majority of farms adhere to a straightforward 3 or 4 year crop rotation. Corn, then beans, then squash, and repeat. It's rapid, uncomplicated, and predictable. The issue, however, pests learn to adapt. They decipher the sequence. It's akin to providing them with an itinerary. Hey there, little beetle. Circle back in 3 years. Your feast will be waiting. The Amish refuse to engage in that game. They confound the pests by remaining unpredictable. They alter the garden layout year upon year. They omit certain crops for whole seasons. Some families might even forego planting entirely in specific plots, allowing weeds or cover crops to dominate solely to mislead the pests. It's like gardening with an expressionless face. I recall assisting on an Amish farm one spring. I anticipated orderly rows like those depicted in gardening manuals, but what I encountered looked almost haphazard, as if someone had spun a roulette wheel and planted items wherever they landed. Seems disorganized, doesn't it? The farmer chuckled. But the pests don't have a clue where anything is either. That's the whole idea. That particular patch of soil hadn't hosted a tomato plant for more than 6 years. By the time one was cultivated there again, the insects that once favored it had either relocated or perished. It isn't just clever, it's patient. While contemporary farms prioritize speed and financial gain, the Amish operate without haste. They are thinking 5-10 years down the line. That extended perspective is what lends their gardens such resilience, because the bugs simply don't have a fighting chance when the ground perpetually changes. And it extends beyond merely planting something different. It's also about fulfilling the soil's requirements for staying healthy. The Amish hold the belief that robust soil yields strong plants, and robust plants are less appealing to pests. Frail plants act like a magnet for bugs. Healthy ones, not nearly as much. They also rely on their intuition. Many of their decisions stem from what their eyes and hands convey. They traverse the fields, they handle the dirt, they observe how the plants react. It transcends mere science. It's tradition transmitted from parent to child season upon season. If a field doesn't feel prepared for potatoes, they won't push it. Even if the plan from the previous year indicated potatoes, they consistently heed the land. On another occasion, I inquired of an Amish elder how they recalled the planting locations without documenting everything. He grinned and tapped his temple. "I have no need for a notebook," he stated. "My father instructed me on where the bugs sleep." That remark stayed with me. These farmers possess an intimate knowledge of their land, much like a parent knows their offspring. They perceive the minutest alterations, the soil's hue, its texture, its aroma, and they recognize when a specific pest might be concealed beneath the surface, poised for them to make a mistake. Consequently, they don't slip up. They also cultivate what they term cleaners. These consist of plants such as clover, rye, or radish, intended not for consumption, but for resetting the soil. They aid in purging old nutrients, introducing new ones, and complicating life for undesirable insects. Consider it a form of detoxification for the earth. These plants signal to the bugs, the party's concluded, move along, and it proves effective. What renders this approach so distinctive is its quietude. No machinery is involved in spraying. There's no humming from drones or traps. Just individuals observing, learning, and placing trust in the process. And the reward? Healthier vegetation, diminished bug populations, and zero requirement for chemicals. It's cultivation that resembles chess more than checkers. Each action is calculated. Every pause serves a function. They permit nature its own pace, and the outcomes are self-evident. Thus, while the majority of people scramble to combat pests after their arrival, the Amish are preoccupied with ensuring those pests never materialize initially. And that process commences right beneath their feet, with soil that retains memory, farmers who pay attention, and a system effective not solely for the present, but for the future years as well. But soil memory constitutes only one facet of the narrative. What truly distinguishes the Amish is their activity before ever making contact with the soil, prior to the hoe striking the ground, before even one seed is sown. Their success isn't driven by action. It stems from attention, stillness, silence, and an element most individuals wouldn't anticipate encountering in a discussion about pest management: prayer. To many outside their community, prayer might appear detached from farming. Yet for the Amish, it's intricately woven into every aspect of existence, the garden included, and not merely in a hasty, "Please grant my plants growth" manner. No, their prayer is serene, concentrated. It involves more than just requesting. It entails listening, observing, remaining still sufficiently long to perceive what most overlook and what they witness. That is the point where genuine protection originates. Rather than responding the instant a bug manifests, the Amish pause. They don't succumb to panic at the initial indication of a hole in a leaf. They refrain from dousing the plants with sprays or blanketing the soil with powders. They halt, they kneel, they observe, occasionally for minutes, sometimes for hours. They monitor the bugs' movements, their times of arrival, the plants they interact with, those they bypass. They make mental records day after day until a discernible pattern emerges. And upon comprehending that pattern, they take action, but not prematurely. That is the crucial element. They don't engage in guesswork, they avoid assumptions, they don't permit fear to dictate their actions. Their entire methodology is founded on rhythm, not reaction. They allow nature to reveal its intentions before making their move. Because from their perspective, the garden isn't merely a source of food. It functions as a living educational environment. And the sole means of learning from it involves slowing down and paying close attention. And this is the detail most people fail to grasp. Bugs possess habits akin to humans. Some emerge during warmth, others favor shaded areas, some navigate low to the ground, while others creep beneath leaves. If you hastily intervene and spray upon first sight, you never discern their true activities. However, if you observe, you learn their timing, you discover their pathways, and possessing that knowledge enables you to halt them without ever requiring poison. This is precisely why prayer holds significance. It fosters the necessary space for observation. The Amish do not perceive prayer as distinct from farming. They utilize it as a method to quiet the mind, enabling them to truly perceive the unfolding events. Their stillness possesses strategic value. It paves the way for observation. It permits nature to communicate. And their observations extend beyond just bugs. They encompass birds. They include spiders. They note the manner in which dew gathers on a specific leaf. They register the sound of the wind as its direction changes. Every element is significant because each component of that puzzle imparts information about impending events, what is secure, and what poses a threat. They permit nature to instruct them, and they refrain from disrupting the lesson with rapid solutions. Most gardens nowadays are characterized by noise, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, people trampling through rows, spraying any moving entity. Conversely, Amish gardens exude tranquility. One can hear the bees, one can perceive the crunch of soil underfoot, and within that quietude, something remarkable transpires. You start to notice the minor details, the initial indications of trouble, the warning signals bugs provide before they establish dominance. That minuscule egg situated on the underside of a leaf. Most individuals overlook it, yet the Amish identify it because they are actively looking. And their looking isn't a one-time event. They persist in checking every morning, every evening at the identical time each day. Because bugs don't materialize randomly, they adhere to cycles. And once those cycles are known, you can thwart them before they even commence. What proves truly potent is how this approach accumulates effectiveness over time. The more seasons dedicated to observation, the greater the learning, the deeper the understanding of your garden, and the lesser the necessity for intervention. It evolves into a cycle of trust between the gardener and the land. The Amish place faith in the notion that answers will manifest if they exercise patience and observation. And indeed they do. Certain pests, for instance, invariably materialize following the initial spell of warm nights. Others emerge subsequent to rainfall. The Amish require no weather application to ascertain this. They have witnessed it for years. They anticipate the arrival of beetles, recognize when to safeguard the squash, know when to omit watering, because the soil will retain adequate moisture for pests to establish themselves. These determinations aren't conjectures. They don't endeavor to dominate the entire ecosystem, merely to guide it gently in the appropriate direction. That constitutes the distinction. While others resort to spraying and to hoping, the Amish engage in study and act with prudence. They refrain from eradicating everything. They cultivate equilibrium. The elegance of this technique lies in its non-destructive nature. It inflicts no harm upon the soil. It doesn't repel beneficial insects. It leaves behind no peculiar odors or residues. It simply involves people, plants, and patience. And the outcome? A garden functioning like a precisely calibrated timepiece, not due to being coerced into form, but because it has been attentively listened to. So indeed, prayer constitutes a component of Amish pest control, yet its purpose isn't merely hoping for bugs to depart. It revolves around establishing the quietude requisite for discerning the actual situation. It involves diminishing the noise and attuning oneself to the language of the land. And within that stillness, the garden communicates. The farmer's sole task is to observe, wait, and allow nature to provide the instruction. Observing the garden in silence grants the Amish an advantage, yet stillness alone fails to halt every insect. Consequently, when observation transitions into action, they eschew chemicals. They opt for something considerably more natural and significantly more unexpected, their clandestine sprays, though not the variety purchased from a retailer. These are concoctions prepared at home, teeming with vitality. The Amish craft their own pest sprays employing substances most individuals would never contemplate. Garlic, molasses, vinegar, even whey or animal urine. Seems peculiar, doesn't it? Yet, here's the crux. When appropriately mixed and permitted to ferment, these components transform into potent natural protectors. No chemicals, no vibrant labels, no safety advisories, merely farm-sourced ingredients allowed to rest and gain strength over time. It transcends merely combining elements and hoping for favorable results. A methodology underpins it. The Amish recognize that fermentation enhances the activity of the compounds. It elicits odors and microbes intolerable to bugs. Certain odors possess sufficient strength to compel pests to reverse direction before even approaching closely. Others function by disorienting the insect's sense of direction, disrupting their capacity to locate the plant. Regardless of the mechanism, the pests are defeated. These fermented sprays pose no harm to the crops. In reality, they frequently provide benefits. The natural bacteria generated during fermentation establish a delicate microbial barrier upon the leaves. This complicates settlement for bugs and additionally aids in shielding the plant from specific molds and diseases. It's analogous to equipping the plants with armor, albeit without obstructing sunlight or damaging the soil. And the situation improves further because each Amish family possesses its unique variation of these sprays. One might employ garlic and mint. Another might favor vinegar combined with rosemary and crushed pepper. Some incorporate a bit of molasses to facilitate adhesion to the leaves. Others permit their mixture to ferment under sunlight for precisely 9 days, as that duration proves most effective in their specific garden. It embodies trial, error, and tradition, all consolidated within a single container. The procedure is straightforward, yet it demands time. Initially, they procure the ingredients, consistently fresh, invariably local. Subsequently, they combine them in water and seal the container. Occasionally, it's a sizable glass jar. Other times, a wooden bucket fitted with a cloth covering. Then, the period of waiting commences. For days, sometimes weeks, the mixture rests and undergoes fermentation. Bubbles emerge, scents evolve, the liquid turns turbid. That signifies its readiness. Upon readiness for application, they filter the liquid and transfer it into hand-operated sprayers. No machines, no pressurized tanks, just physical effort and unwavering hands. They avoid saturating the entire plant. They apply a mist, sufficient only to establish a thin coating, enough to convey the message, "Bugs unwelcome here." The cleverness of this technique resides in its adaptability. If a particular pest becomes more prevalent one year, they modify the ingredients. If the weather proves unusually moist, they might incorporate more garlic or herbs known for rapid drying. They remain perpetually observant, constantly adapting. That quality renders these sprays so formidable. They evolve in tandem with nature. And consider this point often overlooked. Employing chemical sprays can lead to pest resistance over time. They adapt, they develop defenses. But fermented sprays? They consistently exhibit slight variations. The microbial composition shifts, the odor alters. No single formula exists for pests to decipher. It presents a dynamic target, and that is precisely the objective. These sprays also decompose naturally. Concerns about runoff are non-existent, nor are chemicals infiltrating the soil or adjacent streams. Once the spray dries or is washed away, it vanishes. However, the lingering memory it imparts to the bugs remains potent. They recall that scent, that irritation, that discomfort, and, subsequently, maintain their distance. Even more advantageously, fermented sprays do not deter beneficial insects. Bees continue their visits. Ladybugs persist in crawling. Spiders carry on constructing their webs. The Amish harbor no desire to rid the garden of all life. Their aim is to preserve equilibrium. These sprays contribute to that objective. They target pests without eliminating everything else. It's intelligent, straightforward, and sustainable. No labels, no warnings, no hazards to children, pets, or the soil. Just natural components thoughtfully prepared and utilized with diligence. And the outcomes? Healthier plants, fewer pests, and a garden not reliant on chemicals for survival. Therefore, while most individuals are engrossed in deciphering spray bottle labels and attempting to articulate unfamiliar ingredients, the Amish are present in their gardens, pumping a self-made mixture, one possessing a robust aroma, superior efficacy, and ensuring the safety of their plants without ever inflicting harm upon the cherished land. Fermented sprays perform admirably in repelling detrimental bugs, yet not all insects are detrimental, and that is a fact the Amish comprehend better than most. Rather than endeavoring to eliminate every insect within the garden, they adopt an alternative strategy. They create a welcoming environment for the beneficial bugs. Indeed, while numerous individuals strive to exterminate every crawling entity in sight, the Amish are actively constructing residences for them, genuine homes known as insect hotels. These structures aren't elaborate edifices featuring miniature windows or insect-scaled furniture. They are uncomplicated constructions fashioned from materials such as hollow logs, bark, straw, and aged wood. However, for the appropriate type of insect, it represents five-star accommodation. Why undertake such effort? Because advantageous insects serve as nature's own pest control mechanism. Ladybugs exhibit a fondness for consuming aphids. Lacewings pursue soft-bodied pests. Parasitic wasps target caterpillars and beetle larvae. And spiders? They function like inconspicuous hunters, establishing traps and maintaining population equilibrium. These insects fulfill the role pesticides attempt to replicate, yet they accomplish it more intelligently, cleanly, and with absolutely no detriment to the garden. But herein lies the key: those beneficial bugs will not remain unless provided with a place to inhabit. That is the rationale behind the Amish constructing spaces specifically for them. Conceptualize these insect hotels as neighborhoods for bugs, tunnels designed for wasps, crevices suitable for ladybugs, cracks and corners catering to spiders. Each distinct material attracts a different type of occupant. Straw provides shelter. Wood offers hiding spots. Bark retains the optimal degree of warmth. It transcends being a mere accumulation of sticks. It constitutes a deliberate plan, and it proves effective. Instead of spraying to eradicate pests subsequent to their appearance, the Amish introduce predators proactively, even before a problem arises. It's comparable to engaging a security team that operates ceaselessly, never complains, and integrates seamlessly into the surroundings. What demonstrates cleverness is their placement of these hotels. They don't simply position them arbitrarily. They situate them where the bugs are most required, in proximity to plants prone to attracting pests, or in corners where bugs tend to congregate. Sometimes placement is near the edge of a field. Other times it's nestled behind rows of beans or adjacent to a berry patch, consistently close enough for the helpful bugs to execute their duties. And these hotels aren't merely temporary fixtures. They are constructed to endure through multiple seasons. Certain bugs hibernate, while others deposit eggs within the crevices. By maintaining the hotel's presence year-round, the Amish ensure a continuous presence of allies within the garden. Even during winter, the bugs persist, waiting, resting, prepared to return with the arrival of spring. This mode of thinking isn't centered on control. It revolves around balance. The Amish do not desire a garden devoid of bugs. Such a scenario would actually constitute a problem. Instead, they aspire to a garden where no single insect species dominates, where predators and prey coexist harmoniously, where every creature fulfills a role. That equilibrium maintains stability across the board, safeguarding the plants without necessitating a single drop of poison. Constructing an insect hotel requires minimal resources, just natural materials, a measure of time, and the wisdom to identify which bugs to attract. But the resulting impact? It is substantial. A single ladybug is capable of consuming 50 aphids within one day. A handful of parasitic wasps can eliminate. Furthermore, these beneficial bugs do not confine themselves to a single plant. They exhibit mobility. They disperse throughout the garden, inspecting each leaf, each stalk, perpetually vigilant. The more habitats provided, the greater the inherent protection established. It's akin to populating the garden with silent protectors, entities requiring no batteries, wires, or weatherproof casings. Merely a quiet corner and a degree of respect suffice. Even more favorably, the insect hotels integrate aesthetically. They do not detract from the garden's appearance. In fact, they contribute to a heightened sense of vitality. One can observe the bugs arriving and departing, performing their functions, upholding the balance. And that specific form of life, the quiet, beneficial kind, is what fortifies an Amish garden. Most individuals react to sighting a bug with an urge to crush it. The Amish, upon seeing a bug, seek to comprehend it. Some undoubtedly cause trouble, yet many serve as helpers. And by affording those helpers a home, the Amish transform their gardens into something exceptional. Not merely a location for plants, but an entire community, one functioning collaboratively in a natural manner. So while others persist in resorting to sprays and traps, the Amish engage in stacking wood, tucking in straw, and constructing a system proven effective year after year. No chemicals, no cleanup operations, just insects assisting insects, fostering a garden that flourishes as a result. Erecting homes for beneficial bugs demonstrates prudence, But what about crops demanding supplementary assistance? Occasionally, even the most cooperative garden allies cannot prevent every issue. That is when the Amish employ another technique. Not sprays, not contraptions, but screens. Handcrafted, natural, and astonishingly potent. These differ from typical plastic netting or commercially available covers. The Amish refrain from enveloping their entire gardens in synthetic mesh. Instead, their focus remains solely on the plants most in need. And the screens utilized? They are handcrafted from materials one might never anticipate. Items like reed mats, horsehair cloth, or even dried corn husks meticulously woven together by hand. The approach isn't about covering everything constantly. Doing so would retain excessive moisture and introduce new complications such as mold or fungus. Rather, the Amish rotate these coverings. One day might see the tomatoes shielded, the next day the cucumbers, followed perhaps by several days without covers to permit the plants to aerate. The barriers are repositioned purposefully, contingent upon the specific bugs and prevailing weather conditions. This type of covering serves not merely as a shield, it constitutes a strategy. Certain bugs emerge solely in the morning, others favor the late afternoon. Consequently, the Amish coordinate their screen usage to coincide with the threat. A plant might receive protection from dawn until noon, then remain uncovered for the remainder of the day. It all hinges on the pest's rhythm and the characteristics of the materials. These materials are selected deliberately. Reed mats obstruct just enough sunlight to disorient flying insects while still permitting air circulation. Horsehair cloth possesses a fineness adequate to halt minuscule insects, yet remains lightweight enough to avoid smothering young plants. Dried corn husks, tightly layered and flexible, prove ideal for wrapping around stalks or suspending over rows. These aren't mere remnants, they are implements crafted with diligence. What's ingenious is how these screens integrate into the garden landscape. No jarring colors, no loud zippers or plastic fasteners, just natural hues, soft textures, and unobtrusive protection. One might not even perceive them initially, but upon closer inspection, the pattern becomes clear. Each screen positioned with deliberate intent, every action calculated to outwit the bugs, and it proves successful. These coverings perplex pests by disrupting their customary routes. An insect searching for lettuce might fly directly past if the plant's shape appears altered or its scent is obscured. The cover interferes with their detection systems. It's akin to providing the garden with a disguise, one the pests consistently fail to penetrate. Even more advantageously, these barriers inflict no harm upon beneficial insects. Ladybugs and lacewings retain the ability to land nearby. Bees can still access open blossoms. The screens are designed for protection without isolating the remainder of the garden. It embodies targeted defense, no more, no less. And owing to the frequent rotation of the covers, the plants remain healthy. No entrapped heat, no sodden leaves, no concealed locations for mold. Everything preserves its equilibrium. The Amish inspect the screens daily. They assess the soil, gauge the moisture, perceive the air's quality. If anything appears amiss, they make adjustments. Nothing is left to mere chance. What proves even more remarkable is the longevity of these materials. A well-constructed reed mat can endure for several seasons. Horsehair cloth, when properly maintained, exhibits toughness and flexibility. Corn husk screens can be readily replaced given that corn is cultivated directly on the farm. These covers form part of a broader concept. Safeguard the vulnerable, but avoid excessive measures. The Amish do not seek to dominate nature. They aspire to guide it. Screens are not employed daily, only when circumstances necessitate, and always with reverence for the plant and the land. Certain crops require greater assistance than others. Delicate greens, young seedlings, plants possessing soft stems or broad leaves that attract insects, these receive priority for screen placement. Subsequently, the screens are relocated as the garden matures and evolves. What required aid the previous week might not necessitate it currently. The Amish maintain flexibility, perpetually observing, continually adapting. And because these barriers are handcrafted, each one achieves a perfect fit. No oversized nets billowing in the wind, no cumbersome covers crushing the plants, just soft, permeable shields that sway with the breeze. It entails meticulous effort, yet the rewards are significant. The crops develop robustly, the bugs remain bewildered, and the garden sustains its balance. In a world replete with expedient solutions and ubiquitous plastic, this approach possesses a distinct quality. It is slower, quieter, more personalized. Yet its efficacy stems from collaborating with the garden rather than combating it incrementally, day by day. Thus, while others are occupied enveloping their gardens in plastic or spraying every visible leaf, the Amish engage in weaving corn husks, adjusting reed mats, and deploying gentle protection that harmonizes with the rhythm of the land. No chemicals, no machinery, just uncomplicated tools employed with wisdom. And that is how genuine protection is established. Confusion planting. Screens provide crops with a shield. Yet sometimes the optimal defense involves not obstructing bugs whatsoever, but rather deceiving them. And the Amish possess superior skill in this particular game. Instead of confronting pests directly, they misdirect them. This technique is termed confusion planting. It functions by employing plants as decoys, almost akin to setting a trap, though not for lethal purposes, merely to mislead. These plants aren't cultivated for harvesting. They are intentionally planted to divert the bugs. And when executed correctly, it represents one of the most ingenious pest management tactics conceivable. Here's the mechanism. Most insects locate their intended target via smell, shape, or position. They seek a familiar leaf type, a specific height, an aroma they've learned to associate. However, if these indicators are jumbled, the bugs struggle to determine where to land. They hover, they search, they depart. And that state of confusion, that is precisely the Amish objective. So, rather than planting all the squash in a single, orderly row, the Amish might distribute it. A small group here, an individual plant there, then they encircle it with flowers like nasturtiums, which emit a potent fragrance, or perhaps intersperse some tall sunflowers nearby, concealing the smaller plants from sight. Suddenly, the pests lose track of the actual food source. It resembles entering a room filled with mirrors. Everything appears identical, nothing is distinct. That is what the garden transforms into for the bugs, a labyrinth of scents, forms, and heights that consistently fail to lead to the target. Certain plants are selected specifically for their capacity to confuse. Nasturtiums rank among the favorites. Marigolds, mint, and even onions are also utilized. They don't merely differ visually, they possess distinct scents. Strong aromas intermingle in the air, masking the fragrance of more delicate crops. The outcome, the pest's sensory perception, becomes scrambled. And this planting isn't haphazard. The Amish possess knowledge regarding the likely types of bugs to appear and their specific targets. Consequently, they plan their decoys meticulously. They incorporate misleading signals, layer the fragrances, and position plants at precise distances to increase the challenge for the insects. Even spacing holds significance. If the primary crop remains concealed between taller or more strongly scented plants, its likelihood of remaining unharmed improves. Bugs might land on a decoy plant and subsequently move on, presuming they erred. Over duration, fewer eggs are deposited and the pest issue diminishes without necessitating a single application of spray. The elegance of confusion planting lies in its perpetual variation. One year might feature squash and nasturtiums. The subsequent year could involve lettuce and garlic. The combinations fluctuate, rendering it impossible for the bugs to keep pace. No established pattern exists for them to learn. That constitutes the tactic, unpredictability. This technique additionally enhances garden diversity. Instead of extensive sections dedicated to a single crop, one observes a mixture of colors, shapes, and scents. And this benefits the soil as well. Varied root systems, differing water requirements, it all collaborates to maintain the ground's health and vigor. An additional advantage, many decoy plants serve dual purposes as helpers. Some attract beneficial insects, others enhance soil vitality. A select few can even be harvested later for teas or culinary use. Thus, despite being planted for confusion, they still fulfill a function. Nothing is squandered. What truly distinguishes this method is its quietude. No noise, no spraying, no frantic efforts to resolve a problem after its onset. The confusion is integrated from the outset. It represents a gradual, steady approach of working in concert with nature rather than opposing it. And the results are self-evident. Crops grow more robustly, pest populations decline, and the garden maintains its equilibrium, all because the bugs were unable to navigate successfully. It might appear peculiar to plant items solely for the purpose of deceiving insects. Yet, in the hands of the Amish, it elevates to an art form. They require no traps or poisons, merely a sound plan, a few clever decoys, and the patience to permit the garden to perform its function. So while others are actively pursuing bugs with chemicals, the Amish are incorporating deceptive elements into the soil, transforming their gardens into living puzzles that only they possess the key to solving. No technology, no shortcuts, just ingenious, quiet protection demonstrating efficacy season after season. Watering with purpose. Confusing bugs with decoy plants is astute, yet occasionally the core issue isn't the plantings themselves, it's the timing and method of watering. Moisture might appear innocuous, but for specific insects it serves as an explicit invitation. This explains the meticulous care the Amish exercise regarding when they water their gardens. They refrain from watering during the day's peak heat. They avoid saturating plants when the sun is elevated and bugs are actively buzzing. Instead, they exercise patience. They water during the night or extremely early in the morning, just preceding sunrise. And this minor alteration yields a significant impact. Here's the rationale. Numerous flying insects exhibit activity during warm daylight periods. They are attracted to damp leaves, puddles, and softened soil. Watering during the daytime establishes precisely the environment they favor. However, when the Amish water under darkness, they circumvent all that. The bugs remain inactive. The water permeates quietly, and by the time the sun ascends, the garden surface is once again dry, offering nothing for the pests to discover. This practice isn't solely about deterring bugs, it also benefits the plants. Watering at night allows the soil ample time for gradual moisture absorption. Evaporation is reduced, waste is minimized, and more water reaches its intended destination, down to the roots. The plants receive a thorough hydration, the soil remains cool, and the garden maintains its health. But the Amish don't conclude their efforts there. They proceed a step further. They sculpt the soil itself to aid in moisture management. This practice is known as soil mounding. Instead of maintaining a uniformly flat surface, they construct small mounds encircling the base of each plant. These mounds assist in directing the water's flow. They also elevate the plant above the most saturated areas of the ground, ensuring the stems remain dry and robust. This holds importance because moist surfaces, particularly at a plant's base, frequently serve as the origin point for problems. Insects deposit eggs there, larvae emerge and nourish themselves in those damp, concealed locations. However, when the plant resides on a mound, moisture drains away. The bugs forfeit their hiding spot, and the plant stands a better chance of growing without undue stress. Timing proves crucial. Watering excessively early in the day results in sun-induced drying before the roots receive adequate hydration. Watering too late in the morning invites bugs seeking refreshment. But watering under darkness, that's when the beneficial effects manifest. It's cooler, quieter, and considerably more challenging for pests to follow the trail. Even the act of watering itself is performed with care. No sprinklers, no hoses indiscriminately spraying everything. The Amish employ simple implements, watering cans, barrels, and buckets. They pour deliberately near the base. Neither too much nor too little, just sufficient to saturate the roots without splashing the leaves or creating puddles. This slow, steady watering technique also contributes to soil stability. No erosion, no muddy conditions, just firm, healthy ground supporting each plant from its roots upward. And firm soil presents greater difficulty for bugs attempting to burrow or lay eggs. It represents another quiet method by which the Amish exclude pests without resorting to any sprays whatsoever. What demonstrates intelligence is the synergy of these elements, the timing, the tools, the mounds. It comprises a comprehensive system. Each component reinforces the others, culminating in a garden that remains vigorous even amidst summer's heat. People often mistakenly equate increased watering with enhanced growth. This approach additionally minimizes disease prevalence. Damp leaves exposed to sun can precipitate rot, mildew, and blight. However, when water is directed to the soil rather than the leaves and the timing is appropriate, the associated risk diminishes significantly. The plants remain dry superficially while maintaining health underneath. And because this routine is performed daily, the Amish remain consistently informed about their plant's condition. They examine the soil, they touch the leaves, they monitor for indications of stress or pests. It transcends mere watering. It embodies observation, routine, and care consolidated into one activity. There's no wastage involved here, no guesswork, just intelligent timing and uncomplicated tools utilized skillfully. It doesn't demand substantial financial investment. It requires no sophisticated equipment, only knowledge, patience, and a profound connection to the land. So, while others inundate their gardens with hoses at midday, the Amish await the world's quieting. They water when the bugs have departed, when the air is cool, and when the soil can perform its function optimally. It represents a minor adjustment, yet it yields a substantial difference. That is how pests are deterred, through forethought, purposeful watering, and allowing nature to manage the remainder. Watering nocturnally contributes to maintaining the garden's quiet, cool state, rendering it difficult for pests to locate. Ash rings, a simple barrier. Yet, even with precise timing, certain bugs manage infiltration, particularly those exhibiting crawling locomotion. Slugs, beetles, soft-bodied insects lacking flight capability but moving deliberately across the ground. This is the scenario where the Amish deploy another clandestine tool, ash. Not sourced from a store, not contained in a bag, just ordinary wood ash derived from their own stoves. Occasionally, they even incorporate crushed charcoal. And their application method? They sprinkle it around the base of their plants, forming tidy, small rings. Doesn't seem particularly significant, does it? However, those rings function like imperceptible fences, eliciting strong aversion from the bugs. Here's the principle behind its effectiveness. Ash possesses a fine, powdery consistency. To soft-bodied insects, it feels abrasive and desiccating, excessively difficult to traverse. It adheres to their integument, dehydrates them, and induces discomfort. Some bugs reverse direction immediately upon contact. Others attempt crossing but cease midway. In either case, the plant situated within the ring remains secure. Charcoal enhances the effect. It exhibits grittiness, dryness, and aids in maintaining the ash's position during breezes or light rainfall. Collectively, they establish a physical obstruction that is simple, inexpensive, and remarkably effective. And the benefits extend beyond mere bug deterrents. Ash subtly alters the soil composition. Its alkaline nature elevates the pH level. Many crawling pests exhibit a preference for slightly acidic ground. Thus, the addition of ash renders the soil less hospitable. The bugs might remain unaware of the specific reason. They simply recognize their dislike for the environment. This modification occurs gradually, naturally, without detriment to the plants. The Amish refrain from indiscriminate dumping of ash. They employ it judiciously, just a delicate ring encircling each plant, especially those deemed most vulnerable. Lettuce, cabbage, beans, any plant situated close to the ground with tender stems. The ring need not be substantial, merely broad enough to prevent a slug from accessing the leaves. And the paramount advantage? It incurs no cost. The ash originates from their wood stoves, after all. No purchase is necessary. No requirement exists for mixing chemicals or consulting instructions. Simply repurpose existing material. A handful of ash applied with care can surpass the efficacy of an entire shelf of sprays. They also possess the knowledge of when replenishment is necessary. Rain can erode the rings. Wind can disperse the powder. Hence, They inspect following storms. They reapply as required, not excessively, just sufficiently to reconstruct the barrier and maintain the pest's uncertainty. And this technique avoids repelling beneficial insects. It solely impedes those crawling upon the ground. Bees continue visiting the flowers. Ladybugs persist in ascending the stems. The helpful insects proceed with their tasks while the troublemakers remain excluded beyond the demarcation line. Ash rings also integrate into the soil over time. They leave behind no plastic or residual matter. They dissipate naturally, becoming incorporated into the ground. And given that ash contains trace minerals such as potassium and calcium, it even contributes minor nutritional value to the earth during decomposition. That encapsulates its elegance. Nothing squandered, nothing loud or elaborate, just utilizing existing resources with a degree of expertise and considerable care. Occasionally, the Amish combine the ash with crushed eggshells for augmented grittiness, or they distribute it along slug pathways to deter their return. They observe attentively, they ascertain effective strategies, and adjust accordingly. The rings aren't merely lines etched in the dirt. They convey a message, one readily understood by bugs. Proceed elsewhere. And when employed correctly, that message progressively intensifies daily. Even more favorably, this method inflicts no harm upon the soil. In fact, applied in modest quantities, ash can enhance it. It aids in pH balance. It nourishes the microbes, facilitating root development. And it subtly invigorates the garden while simultaneously hindering pest establishment. That equilibrium constitutes the core principle. Excessive ash could render the soil overly alkaline. Insufficient amounts might permit bug penetration. However, the Amish avoid guesswork. They gauge by sight, by touch, by accumulated experience. They have practiced this for generations, and their gardens attest to the outcomes. While others resort to spraying, trapping, and hoping for favorable results, the Amish encircle their plants with something simple, safe, and proven.
No machinery, no labels. Just ash, charcoal, and tradition collaborating to exclude bugs and foster robust garden growth. Geese, living pest patrol. Ash rings safeguard plants from crawling insects at ground level. But what about pests arriving via hopping, buzzing, or flying? That's where the Amish introduce something slightly unconventional, yet highly effective: a goose. Yes, geese, large, vocal, and surprisingly beneficial. Within Amish gardens, they serve as more than mere farm animals. They function as a pest patrol, executing their duties without ever requiring respite. Here's the operational principle. In more extensive gardens, Amish families will tether a goose within a specific zone, not overly restrictively, just sufficiently to confine it to a managed area. Then they relocate it every few days. Gradually, section by section, the goose traverses the entire garden over duration.
While grazing, it accomplishes two tasks concurrently: consuming weeds and hunting for insects. But not indiscriminately. Geese demonstrate particular proficiency in locating grasshoppers and beetles, those pests known for bouncing about or concealing themselves among low-lying leaves. The goose detects them rapidly. And in contrast to chickens, which can disrupt a garden through scratching and pecking at everything, geese exhibit gentleness towards crops. They refrain from digging, they avoid tearing at roots, they nibble, ambulate, and maintain movement. The tethering aspect is crucial. Without it, the goose might stray into areas demanding greater care, such as delicate seedlings or nascent greens. However, when guided by a rope or fence, the goose remains precisely where its services are required. It functions akin to a mobile fence line, with the distinction that this one consumes pests along its path. What enhances its appeal is the simplicity of the arrangement. No fences, no batteries, merely a post, a rope, and a goose possessing the instinct to find sustenance. As the tether is repositioned each week, the bird investigates new territory, and every step taken contributes to maintaining the garden's cleanliness. Geese also excel at identifying elements that don't belong. They show no inclination to pursue bees or butterflies. They exhibit no interest in flowers or healthy plants. Their focus remains on weeds, fallen fruit, and insects. This implies their contribution extends beyond mere pest control. They perform cleanup duties as well. This method also operates without causing soil damage. No heavy machinery, no compaction, just light footfalls and natural locomotion. It proceeds quietly, safely, and leaves the garden appearing tidy upon completion of the task. And because geese consume their findings, no subsequent cleanup is necessary. No traps require emptying. No sprays need washing off. Just one fewer beetle here, one fewer grasshopper there. Day after day, the pest population diminishes, allowing the plants to grow undisturbed. The Amish possess the expertise to pair the appropriate goose with the suitable garden. Some breeds are better suited for expansive areas. Others perform well within narrower rows. They also ensure the birds have access to nearby water and shade during hot weather. The animals constitute integral parts of the system, not mere tools for utilization and disregard, but living collaborators in the process. And geese contribute not solely during the growing season. Even during off months, they can be rotated through fields to eliminate residual pests or weed seeds. This prepares the garden for an improved start the following year. This system additionally cultivates patience. One cannot expedite a goose's actions. One allows it to graze, provides adequate space, and trusts it to perform its inherent function optimally. The Amish refrain from rushing the process. They observe, they guide, and they permit the animals to operate in harmony with the land. And that principle, harmony, underlies this method. Harmony between flora and fauna, between the cultivator and the garden, between the problem and the solution. Everything interconnects, everything mutually supports. While others allocate funds for bug sprays and weed killers, the Amish secure a rope, position a post, no noise, no chemicals, just a steady rhythm and a keen eye. It lacks ostentation. It isn't rapid, but it proves effective. And ultimately, the garden remains healthy, the pests remain excluded, and the geese receive adequate nourishment. A mutually beneficial outcome. That embodies the power of nature. When guided with care and employed with wisdom, it functions effectively. Wind, silence, and planting with the breeze. A tethered goose can traverse the garden, eliminating pests situated on the ground. However, some problems originate not from the soil, but right upon the air. Minuscule wings, buzzing bodies, pests drifting inward with the wind before detection. And once more, the Amish stand prepared well before a single seed makes contact with the earth. Their secret? Silence and wind. Prior to planting anything, they pause. They listen intently. They observe the manner in which the wind navigates through the landscape. During the early morning hours, before the garden fully awakens, they devote careful attention to sound and air currents. This transcends mere weather observation. It pertains to direction, rhythm, and flow. Most individuals overlook wind considerations when planting a garden, yet the Amish do not. Because flying pests adhere to the breeze, they move in accordance with the currents. They drift towards olfactory cues, and planting without comprehending the wind's trajectory might inadvertently guide bugs directly to your most valuable crops. Therefore, the Amish instead meticulously study the pattern. They walk the land during periods of stillness. Then, they await the breeze. Which direction does it predominantly blow? Where does it tend to settle? Which corners remain calm? And which transform into thoroughfares for insects? Upon ascertaining this information, they determine the layout, not predicated on aesthetics nor on spatial constraints, but grounded in airflow dynamics. The most delicate crops, those favored first by chewing insects, are positioned upwind. This compels flying pests to exert greater effort to reach them. The more resilient plants, such as onions, herbs, or flowers possessing strong scents, are situated downwind or along the peripheries. They establish a buffer, a barrier, a natural shield. This configuration yields twofold benefits. Firstly, it preemptively halts bugs. Secondly, it complicates their target acquisition. Scents travel with the wind. By planting upwind, the Amish curtail the distance those scents carry. Pests fail to detect the lettuce or tomatoes immediately. And lacking olfactory detection, they refrain from landing. Even auditory cues play a role. On tranquil mornings, certain bugs produce minute sounds, a buzz, a flutter, a soft tapping upon landing on leaves. The Amish listen for these sounds as well. If pests are detected in a specific corner, they make note. They avoid planting tender crops in that location. Instead, they select spots where the wind exhibits greater strength, where bugs find settling more difficult. And this assessment is repeated annually because wind patterns shift, trees mature, fields alter configuration. A pathway deemed safe the previous spring might pose risks currently. That is why the Amish never rely on guesswork. They conduct tests. They exercise patience. They permit the land to dictate their actions. It constitutes quiet labor, no machinery, no noise, just stillness, patience, and faith in the Earth's communications. And once equipped with knowledge, they plant purposefully. They also utilize natural barriers, hedges, rows of corn, wooden fences, not necessarily to obstruct the wind entirely, but rather to channel it, to shape its course. If a low-lying area exists where air tends to accumulate, they avoid it. If a slope funnels wind linearly, they leverage it. Every square inch of the garden is positioned with deliberate intention. This awareness extends beyond mere insect management. It aids in pollination as well. If bees can navigate a gentle breeze, they locate flowers more rapidly. If the wind conveys the appropriate scent, it attracts beneficial helpers rather than pests. The Amish consider all these factors because within a natural garden, interconnectedness prevails. They require no weather forecasts or anemometers. They employ their senses, sight, hearing, and touch. A rustling of leaves, a change in temperature, a shift in sound propagation, all these elements narrate a story. All contribute to shaping the garden's construction. And once the layout is established, they adhere to it. They conduct reevaluations during the season. If wind patterns change, adjustments might be made. Adding a row of sunflowers here, introducing a patch of basil there, consistently guiding the breeze, perpetually safeguarding what holds utmost importance. What renders this method particularly special is its cost-free nature. No tools, no products, solely awareness. It represents a quiet form of science, one effective without formal designation, one perceiving wind not as an issue, but as a collaborator. So while others commence digging without forethought, the Amish step back. They listen attentively. They allow the air to move, and they follow its guidance. Because occasionally, the most effective means of combating flying pests involves not sprays or traps, but rather an intelligent plan and a measure of silence. That is how the garden achieves victory even before its inception. No sprays, no poisons, no panic, just wisdom, patience, and nature collaborating harmoniously as it consistently has. From rotating crops based on soil memory to deploying a goose as patrol, the Amish have elevated pest control to an art form. They refrain from battling bugs with chemicals. They outmaneuver them through timing, silence, and strategy. Every action undertaken is deliberate, uncomplicated, and profoundly intentional. They confuse pests using decoy plants, invite helpful insects with handcrafted shelters, and even interpret the wind prior to planting a single seed. They require no noise to safeguard their gardens. They employ quietude, watchfulness, and generations of ingrained knowledge. Therefore, if your garden faces an onslaught, perhaps the solution lies not in increased product usage, but rather in reduction. Less haste, less guesswork, less spraying, and more listening, more noticing, more learning from those who have persistently employed the challenging approach, simply because the challenging approach proves effective. Now the opportunity is yours. Which technique surprised you most significantly? What traditional trick might you attempt in your own backyard? Share your thoughts in the comment section. We make it a point to read every single one. And if you found this information beneficial or simply desire further wisdom of this nature, click that subscribe button. There's considerably more originating from this source.